Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm sure you are all looking forward to today's webinar. I think what a pleasant way to spend your Friday afternoon, having to sadly put up with me and to go through some lovely SBL on there. Feel free to say hello in the chat if you're joining us live. If you're watching the recording of this back, my name is James Wright, and if you have any questions about the slides that we'll go through today, feel free to email the support team at LearnSignal. There are also going to be other resources available to you on the LearnSignal platform directly about Preseen materials to help you to best prepare. So just make sure you check out those when you next log in to your account so that you can factor it in. Feel free to say hello in the chat where you're tuning in from. Maybe if you're looking forward to your SBL exam on there, maybe let me know in the chat actually if you've read some of the Preseen materials already. Maybe some of you have had a quick look through them, maybe you've downloaded them. Maybe you've not read them at all. I don't know. Could be one of those things. So it could be one of those on there for it. So the email, Robin, the LearnSignal team will pop in the chat for you now. So yeah, there you go. So it's just help@learnsignal.com. If you have any questions about maybe how you're going to fit it in with the boot camp, going through the different modules on there, and so that you are as best prepared as you can be. This is a new sort of setup for myself and the team because obviously the exam has changed. So we adapt with the exam so that we provide the best possible preparation for students to help you prepare for that examination. And hence, that's why, Friday afternoon, you're really treating yourself coming along today. So feel free to say hello in the chat. Like I said, we've got still people joining us now. You can also watch the recording back. I know we had a couple of questions on that in the chat. And then there'll be future resources available to you on top of that. So all good, really. Just a real helpful session that we've sort of based this on, and I'll be walking through to you as what would I be thinking if I had to sit the SBL exam? How would I approach these Preseen materials? And we've gone through each individual section on there. So we'll just get started in a second. We've still got a few more people coming in. Currently, all the slides which I'm showing today are going to be put into one quite simple PDF that you can actually just download, have it on your phone, on your laptop, and breaks it down as well. It says on here from Rima, the video is slightly lagging. If anyone's facing any issues, it can be sometimes that you need to log in and log back out, log out and then log back in on there. But I want to get stuck into this so far, but I just want to just double check. Just ping in the chat because obviously I'm going to share my screen and I won't be able to see the chat box. Just pop in the chat box, yes or no, if you can hear me, see me, okay, just before we get kicked off, because that would be pretty bad, wouldn't it, if we started and you can't hear me and you can't see me or anything. Cool. Okay. Yeah, I would rather ask, what's the point of me chapping away for ages? Excuse me. Right. Okay. Thanks, Anna. Thanks, Tammy. Robin, Amy, Syed, Yelaventa as well. Sorry if I've mispronounced that for it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you very much, Sunday, as well, for confirming on there. So Rima, maybe just log in, log back out on there, and you can watch the final bits on here. So let me just share with you my entire screen so that we can get stuck into some of the slides that, again, nicely prepared by myself and the LearnSignal team to help you out on there, that you can see that we're going to go through a nice sort of deep dive on here of the Preseen materials. Now, if I was you, I would have a sort of pen and paper to hand. These slides, I'm pretty sure we're going to be making them available, but I think they're best sort of shown in a nice PDF that we've got where it's all in one place on there. And then I'm just going to walk through all the different areas that are touched on in the actual slides so that you can prepare for the pre-seen actual question. And what would I do if I was in your situation, basically? So we've got a synopsis at the start, which is just basically a nice little summary of what, when I went through the pre-seen materials, did I think, and maybe you've had a look at these first of all. So if you haven't actually already found the pre-seen materials for SBL, you just go into your My ACCA account and then you can download them in there. They are in one nice easy PDF. And what we've done on here is telling you about the company, its environment, and the overall industry. So for your notes to get down, the key things from this pre-seen material that I took away from it is you've got two different elements to consider. The company itself, working in the airline industry, we've got to consider the size, the revenue, the structure, the ethos, the ethics. And then we've got the industry as a whole, which granted you could go away, and this is where you must not get confused, because I thought I'll have a little look online to see what people are questioning. You mustn't go away and do tons and tons of research about the airline industry and all these sort of things and go, right, I know about Ryanair's turnover and all this sort of stuff. That is not what they're wanting you to do. Granted, if you just want a bit more knowledge, like how does a plane get put together? How do airline companies make money? These are the sort of things that they could actually put into this sort of made-up company on there and test you on. But please do not think they're going to give you something on Qantas, British Airways, or anything like that. So keep it simple. These are the ideas that you need to have in your actual head on there. And I'm just going to hide at the bottom, so do it off on there. Cool. As to the types, by quite simply geography on there in terms of the airlines. So you've got two different types on here. We've got national airlines and regional airlines. So we've got focusing on the services within that actual home country on there, with some offering international destinations, having smaller aircraft fleets, catering for both leisure and business passengers. And then we have regional, which is all about specific areas, covering locations served not served by national or international airlines. In other words, some flights that go short to small locations, little teeny-weeny flights on there, versus international or national flights that go further afield. So that's where maybe you've gone on a small flight to Europe, a small internal flight in the country where you're from, versus a long-haul flight to New York or Australia or the UK. Then we've got to consider the types by business model. Now, this is where we've just got ideas as to, from the pre-seen materials and the SBL topics that could be tested, what areas do you need to consider and have in your mind before your SBL exam? Now, the key bit for your notes, and what I thought when I read these through, is you must not get into, how's the best way to word this, the mindset of just referring to these pre-seen materials. Granted, you need to be specific, referring to, like on here, the full service carriers, low-cost carriers, charter airlines, understanding, like picturing in your mind, I don't mind my planes, you know, my 747, 767s, 737s, all these sort of stuff. If you don't know what that means, just have a little Google so you understand about planes a bit and the different sizes and how far they can go. Because then that's where it links into offering, say, cheaper flights, specific destinations, quantity of people that can go on planes, checking in baggage, airport lounges. When you travel quite a lot, you get quite used to all this sort of things, but there are going to be students who are joining us today who have never had these sort of aspects, may not have been on a long haul flight. So it's just understanding the different business models, how they can be profitable, and what services and products they can offer to the customers. So this is where we get into Corjetz, and we're getting into the company itself and going into the specifics here. Now, everything that you see on the slides today, we've got a lot to go through, is all based on what we've been given in the pre-seen materials. Now, for your notes, and it would be in the back of my mind going into your exam, is do not solely rely just on the pre-seen materials. there will be new materials, new figures, new words, new aspects on there that the examiner will be expecting you to actually implement. But granted, let's just have a look at the mission statement. So, to connect the people of Hundria on there through affordable and sustainable air travel. That is their mission statement. So, what I'd be thinking there is, if I read something in the exam, in the requirements, or I see something in the new material that does not relate to that mission statement, affordability, sustainable air travel, I could definitely refer to that mission statement and quote it directly that Corjetz may have made a performance or financial decision that does not align to its mission statement and also potentially its values on there. So sustainable behavior, safety, customer trust, innovation, putting people first. Please do not expect, and this is where you need to get your expectations in line for this exam. If I was sitting the exam in your position, I would expect there to be lots of things going wrong or lots of grey areas where you've got probably people on the boards of directors, management, something on there that you go to yourself, hang on a second, that's an ethical issue. Is that right in terms of the values and the mission statement? Maybe we might have some agency theory on there that the directors want one thing and the shareholders want another. You should not be question spotting based on the Preseen materials and the metrics that we put on the screen and have gone through from some of the actual pieces of information. You've got to have a good understanding that going into your SBL exam, if you were to say and have a look at the costing on there, and you might get something on like, oh, how could the company become more cost efficient? Where could they reduce wastage? And just having a bit of an understanding about the air ground handling and the depreciations and the leasing. So how much control does the financial accountant have over it? How much control can they actually change the costing here? Because obviously depreciation and leasing, you could change potentially the way that the assets are depreciated to be more favorable or adverse for the company that would have a knock-on effect on profitability versus some of the costs on there like fuel or other, 9% on other. There are things where you could actually say, we need more information on that as to can we buy in the fuel in greater quantities? What is actually in that other? These are the things that you've got to be questioning so many aspects in your actual SBL exam, both from what we've received previously and then also received completely brand new in the real examination on there. So as I go through these sort of aspects, we've got the air traffic control maintenance. We've talked about on here, these are the figures as we've got profits, revenues, customer satisfaction over the years. This is where different tastes and preferences can change and the variability that you need to consider. Now, I touched on earlier, not to question spot, but ethics, please think to yourself, ethics is embedded into every ACCA examination. So the bread and butter of integrity, confidentiality, professional behavior, these are the aspects from ACCA's code of ethics that could fall under any scenario. And this is where you can't question spot, but you've just got to, when you read through the question in the examination, you go, I'm expecting to see some ethical issues in here. And then you've got to get down to writing a little note or coming up with a system when it comes to exam day, how to actually take down the information and link it into the requirements. So anything on here about health and safety, and then you've got innovation, data protection, there are obviously going to be risks associated with it. And you've got to think to yourself, for your notes, I would say, where are the risks? Which area of the code of ethics, as we said, integrity could be one that could be pulled into account. And then the third thing would be the accountability. So who is actually in charge of this? Who is making the decision making? And finally, the potential impact. In the SBL exam, the examiner, if I'm marking your work, will want to know why on there. You have to go deep into business detail to touch on these things in a lot of detail. Specifics on here that I look for before we get on to leadership, just for your notes, is everything from Writing down the company's name, I see every time when I go through some papers, it's just it or they or stuff like that. Granted, there may be students here where English isn't your first language, and this is where the new style for SBL is linked into the way of actual business. So it's a case of you get given information, you have to interpret on there. So it's a case of the expectation is that if a name is given of a management accountant or a business director, whatever it may be, use the names to shape your answer, first of all. That makes it more specific, linking back to the scenario. The next thing is in the requirements that are set, use the words in the requirement to shape your answer. So if they start talking about profitability and individuals at the organization, which could link into leadership that you can see on here, or risk management on there, you should start your actual answer by saying the risk management structure of X, Y, and Z Limited would be, and then that's where if it was a 6-mark question, you've got to have 6 decent points, or you've got to interpret the actual requirement to say, are there 2 elements that I have to refer to? So it could be, what is the ethical issue identified? And then what would be the potential safeguard, maybe in terms of stakeholder well-being or external challenges on there. But anything to do with evidence for collaborative leadership on there is a case of, I'm thinking of the board of directors in my mind. Are they linking to the overall goals of the organization? I think of the hierarchy. There's going to be some hiccups between staff members. It's not all going to be sunshine and rainbows on there. Are we going to have a trade-off between 2 different activities? Usually you get something, could be something like profit versus purpose. We've got dual reporting on there, cross-departmental communication, cooperation. So in your mind, you've got to think of this airline and how it is being operated, and the things that are going right and the things that are going not so right, we say, or wrong on that. There will be things that are going particularly wrong. So just coming on to that, we've got the key performance indicators on there. Sorry, if you want to get it down on there, or key performance indicators, KPIs. Now, you can't question Spot to say what could definitely be coming up, but those ones nicely identified on the left-hand side there. So the available seat kilometers on there, we've got load factors, average fares. This is where, because it's an airline industry, you've got to have in your mind a picture of how it would operate. And I try to think about this as to, if you're going on a plane from start to destination, how do you get there, and what are all the variables that you have to consider? So everything from, if I go to an airport, obviously I've got to park up, I go through security, I've got the logistics of checking in, getting my ticket, then if I've got any baggage that goes in, and then I've got to see about how many seats are on the plane, what's what, and if I'm an airline, if I can get that plane completely full with capacity, I've then got to pay a pilot or 2, and then I've got the health and safety, I've got to put the fuel on the plane, I've then got to hire the hostesses on there, I've then got to get the customers' bags off, and then I've got to get them out of the airport, so I've got to pay the airport to get the planes on there. All these sort of things link into different metrics and different variables that could quite easily come up. So what I'm getting at is, the market is going to be looking for you to apply your knowledge to the company and to the business environment on there. So even just using words like passenger and not people on there, or customers, that'll definitely help to guide your answer to make it sound more credible, to be honest with you, on there. And linking it to, notice at the bottom, say CO2 per passenger. So that links into the core values of the organization and the actual mission statement, the environmental impact. So for your notes, just try and pick up when you go through the notes in a bit more detail of the Preseen materials, what areas overlap with one another? Are there any outliers that you think, hang on a second, I could maybe quote that directly, use it as a good point on there? What I'm getting at is, the more you are prepared on these Preseen materials, and the more questions you ask when you see the new material in the exam, the better off you are going to be. Touched on risks already, and this is because you can't just expect to go into this exam and everything's going to be fantastic at this company, and the planes are going to arrive on time, and they're going to be eco-friendly, and there are going to be no things going wrong or events potentially after the reporting period. What I'm trying to get at is so that you think on your toes as to when I'm analysing the new information on the exam day, I know things are not going to be fantastic here. And this is where maybe for your notes, you just want to think about it from a wider scoping perspective, because lots of students who fail the SBL exam will write a super answer, but they will just focus in on the impact of climate change. And they'll think, you know what, I've wrote 5 or 6 really good points on the impact of climate change. The examiner's going to really love that, about the expectations, the regulators, linking it to the sustainability factors and the activities, top notch. Well, it depends on that requirement that is set, but you may have to consider internal and external other factors. We've got safety and security risks on there, customers and staff. So again, paying customers or people who work there. You've got the macroeconomic and geopolitical events. So think about that. Economic trends could then impact on the costs involved. So that could be the fuel, the exchange rates, all of these other factors. That's what I'm thinking. You've got to be on your toes as to, we don't know what they're going to put in there, but it all links into the financial performance, squeezing the margins, put in some good terms like contribution per unit is also affected, break even, per flight. Are there other risks that we need to keep our staff up to date, emergencies, security checks? All of these things push costs up on there. And finally, we've got everything such as security, website performance, systems. This is becoming more and more prominent in the accounting and wider business sector, about companies getting hacked or having their data stolen. So again, the digital nature is another factor, which again, they could pop into your examination in one way or another from a risk. So it's just so that you're aware of it, that it's not just going to be, tell me about the figures and tell me about accounting and the profitability and all these sort of things. That is not what the SBL exam is about. This is where some little bullet points for you on here as to how we respond to those risks in those particular areas. Everything from training on there, different protocols, what systems do we have in place. That's the thing where if you're going talking about risks, you've got to have in your mind, and probably like me, you've never worked at an airport or you've never worked for an airline. You have to do it off the back of your own knowledge of how it all works. The only other thing of like external research before this exam would be just to understand how that airline works on there. How does a plane work? I've had the pleasure of actually seeing a plane in a skeleton and having a few tours on it and stuff like that. So actually, I'm quite, I'm really interested in them. But you've got to think about it as to, they're testing you. It's the strategic professional level, that you are a finance director, you're going to be tip top on the board level, and you've got to make these planning decisions. You've got to think about efficiency, the different variables, and how it's going to affect this business on there. You've got to also consider, you might have heard the term like contingency plans, or if this happens, what we're going to do about it, the balancing of risk and reward. There are going to be things where you're going to have to talk about the pros and the cons, and then come to an evaluation to say what is the best course of action on there. We then have disruptive technologies. So again, it comes down to areas that are changing in the accounting sector that could be used, not just accounting sector, but also can impact on the aviation sector, to help out with maybe the infrastructure of their technology. So maybe using artificial intelligence on there, or blockchain technology, machine learning, that can make the process of getting our customers onto that plane more effective. You also have 5G connectivity you've got down there, 3D printing, all things that could enhance the customer experience. But think about it as what could be automated, what could be changed in the process. Like you've got electric and hybrid aircraft on there. Obviously, most planes have a Rolls-Royce engine in there, and they are fueled by jet fuel on there, isn't it? So it's not like they're electric or hybrid now. So these are potential options that new innovative companies will be looking at in the future. And again, it links into their overall ethos and how they want the company to be run. So it's just thinking on your toes what that they could throw in a bit of technology or a bit of something new, and you'd have to weigh up, right, how much is that going to cost? How would we implement it? How many of the staff actually know how to do this? This is the questioning nature you have to apply in your SBL exam. Environmental analysis is going to be pretty key, I would say, as it's an airline industry. It's very topical on there. We've already seen in the mission statement and their values. And this is where I think it's not to question spot or do anything on those lines. It's a case of the team have put together some of the actual models that are in the SBL syllabus. But one of the areas that students fail on the SBL exam is that they don't recognize that they need to apply an actual model, like here with the SWOT analysis. So they don't recognize how to apply it. And then secondly, they don't apply it effectively. So SWOT on here, I'm sure you're all aware: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now, this is not for you to go, right, I know about SWOT analysis now, and I know what could be tested. This is just giving you an example of it could come up in your examination, in the sense of it could have come up in the last one and the last one before that. It's just so that you're aware that when you're reading through the requirement and the scenario, as you're going through it, just try and picture in your mind, is the examiner in the scenario trying to get you to a strength here? Does it sound like an opportunity for the company? Are there threats such as cybersecurity, climate change we've talked about? And then also the weaknesses or areas that it could link to with environmental concerns, competitor analysis, different partnerships. In other words, expect to have theories or models, whatever you want to call them, in your examination. Nobody can question spot on it from the Preseen materials. So if you're reading from gurus online, that this will definitely come up. So not a chance on there. But this is to give you a little inkling and an insight to say, if it was to come up in an area, this is something that you could consider to actually model your answer on. As to, you've got to consider all different 4 areas. But it's a case of you have to think on your toes in the exam to say, right, I've got this model, I've got SWOT analysis, I've got others like PESTLE on here we'll come on to. But it's not a case of we are question spotting on here. It is a case of you thinking about what was tested in terms of the new materials given to us, and then can any of the models like on here, just coming on to some of the strengths. So they've got a really focused business model. They've been around for a number of years. They're an established presence. They've got both international and internal flights, and they've been quite adaptive to challenges, which every airline industry is facing at the moment. So hence why they've probably put it in as an example on there. So I think it could be molded into some answers, but there is no guarantee it is going to come up on there. It's just so that you have, okay, final point on this is, in your exam, going into it, you have to be comfortable with SWOT analysis, pick it up on the scenario in the exam, and then to work out, is this the correct model to apply to this particular requirement? And as you can see on here, which I thought was really good for the team to actually consider and give us a nice little breakdown on here, where we've got actually PEST, or from PESTLE on here, where we've got the different factors. In PEST, we have political, economic, social, and technological factors. So again, same principle as before. We have a model that is in the syllabus. Just to reiterate, no one can predict what models, what areas is going to come up on your exam. You can't question spot. But what you need to do is to have these models, have these theories, and say, from the Preseen material, what political, economic, social, and technological factors have been referred to, or that what could come under those sort of heading title areas. And then also, hey, it might not. It's not just going to say, "Oh, tell me about pest in your or pest or in your answer." You will have to pick up on, like in political, you've got the trade agreements, taxation, regulatory on there, social factors, all about people, cultures, preferences, awareness. These are sort of things where, as you're reading, I remember when I had to do mine. I remember reading through these scenarios, what you got given in the exam. And my previous approach, which was bad, was I used to remember the models like SWOT and PESTLE and all these sort of stuff, which we'll come on to. And I used to go, right, that requirement sort of sounds like it's this one, so I'm just going to do it anyway. What you need to get into the habit of doing is in your exam is when you read through the requirements and you read through the scenario, have a look at the marks first of all to say, hang on a second, if it's 6 marks, is that really enough marks for a SWOT analysis or a PEST or something like that? Probably not. So that's the first giveaway, that you shouldn't be wasting too much time on it or applying the wrong theory on there. And then secondly, is when you're actually going through a particular area, because we all know as you go through the scenario, then you have the requirements at the bottom. And if you're reading throughout the scenario and you're saying to yourself, hang on a second, they're going on about cybersecurity here, they've got different new technological areas, and then you go, hang on, they've also talked about interest rates going up, which makes it more expensive for them to borrow money, and there's volatility and inflation, so the fuel costs are going up. So you go, hang on a second, I've got a point on technology, I've got a point on economic, and then that's when the alarm bells should be going in your head that you might have an 8 to 12 or an 8 to 14 mark question or requirement, and you go, hang on a second, I think we're going to be having to apply like PEST on here or PESTLE for it. So just little things like that will help you going into your examination. And finally, just to add on here, it's all about then planning your answer as a result for it. So lots of students with these models, and we can talk about this in terms of strategy now, is they do not have a clear strategy as to how to lay out their answer. So with those models and strategies like we have on here, you've just got to be aware as to, right, hang on a second, where are we all in all this? And how much do I have to be writing so that I actually answer as much as I can? So we've got Ansof's matrix on here, but no stuff at the top, just applying concepts from the SBL examination, market penetration, market development, product development, diversification, all these things about defensive strategies, digital transformation, considering all the different elements of this company. That is where they could test you on any of these different things. Could they be maybe looking to penetrate an international market? Should they merge with another company? Should they buy a sister company? Could they look at a partnership? Could we look at new routes? Nobody knows what they're going to test you on your exam, but these are the sort of things, again, thinking if you're a finance director of an airline international company that is established for 20 years, these are the things that could come up, or areas that you could refer to back to those Preseen materials on there for it. So it's just to give you a sort of nice little overview of the different strategies and what to consider. So like on there, mergers and acquisitions, have they ever bought one in the past? Do we have the right infrastructure in place? Then you've got to think about costing. How would it proactively work? Could there be risks in terms of cybersecurity? And all of the rest on there. So it's, again, just to give you more ideas as to what could come up. And then another model on here in terms of Porter's 5 forces. The same applies, that when you're reading through that scenario, when you're going through it, you've got the power of buyers, power of suppliers on there, competitive rivalry, threats of new entrants, threats of substitutes, the 5 forces that you can see. It's not going to tell you in the requirement, use Porter's 5 forces. You're going to have to analyze the requirements, analyze what you're given, and then apply the model, the actual theory on there to the scenario. So again, when it comes under these different areas, it's all about from the power of buyers, differentiation, different costing. These, you see how you got the little points on here, like economies of scale, brand loyalty. This is your like 1 or 2 marks per point that you would then talk about for it. So it's just to highlight really the details that you need to go into, and it will be the difference between you passing or potentially failing it, and you're going to have to be doing more and more question practice to time, which is another point I want to definitely mention at the end as well for this. We also have to consider, again, from this theory, tested in the syllabus at SBL, it's something you need to be aware of from generic strategies, cost leadership on there. Do we go low cost? How do we consider the efficiency? So in other words, how do we get that customer on the plane as efficiently as possible, reducing the cost per customer as much as we can? Differentiation on there, how can we get better compared to our competitors? Any sort of loyalty programs, anyone who's part of maybe the British Airways loyalty scheme that makes people buy on that particular airline versus going to a lower alternative. These are things where you then start to use your innovation to actually talk about it in a bit more detail. It's not just about the numbers in this examination. If you're new to SBL or this is your first attempt, we have other areas you can see on here about different business models, safety and security. It's not just about the figures. You have to think proactively as if it was your business. How would you operate it? How do we get things more effective, more efficient? I'm trying to use SBL terms for you here, but they've highlighted on here 7 different areas that could crop up as there might be a risk here. How do we make it more effective? Anyone who's into cycling will know from Dave Brailsford, it's all about the little marginal gains. And that is where the little marginal gains in every single business come in. Everything from safety and security, sustainability, the costing of everything. How can we get a little bit better in every single step on there? In terms of the factors that have helped maintain the low-cost business model, this is everything that is going well. So they're functioning, they're operating efficiently on there, they're bulk buying, transforming themselves digitally, again, to reduce that cost. Strong negotiation, partnerships, productivity. This goes without saying that probably one of these will probably go wrong, or there'll be a competitor that does it a bit better. So what is the company actually going to do about it? Again, if you're not familiar with the process of how an airport works, how a flight works, how planes are profitable, that is maybe something, again, to take the case study material, understand it on there, but understanding the type of business is so important. Otherwise, your answers are not going to be specific enough for it. Capacity management, labor productivity, it's just looking at every single step of the process and thinking to yourself, how can we get a little bit better? Or how do we reduce the waste here? How do we change this? All these little factors all add up to a massive, massive, massive difference. So just considering, again, no one can predict that these 8 areas are going to come up, or it's just to think from when we went through the materials, what were ideas that came to hand, and then you go, hang on a second, that is a potential area that could be discussed, or a student could refer back to it as well on there. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is where I want to make sure that we have time at the end, because I'm sure, like in every webinar I do, which is why I love doing them for LearnSignal, you're going to have lots and lots of questions. If you haven't already got your phone out, feel free to now. So that is the QR code so that you can actually get the SBL Preseen contents on LearnSignal. I'd also recommend that you download them on the ACCA website as well. You get the actual PDF, and it shows ACCA that you have actually downloaded it on there. Going away from today, key bits for your notes on here before I come back to the main screen, so we can see you've got, obviously, for your notes, you should be participating in the boot camp that is going on at the moment to hold yourself accountable day by day from set materials by the LearnSignal team that will definitely help you out. Also to note, please don't miss it. On your platform, on LearnSignal, they have a specific folder for actually finding the SBL Preseen materials, and I think they've got some other questions on there as well, just to help you out, along with the sort of overview PDF of these sort of slides for you to download on there. So if you can't find it, we've got the help@LearnSignal email in the chat box on there. Plus, we've got the LearnSignal team in the background with us today. So if you have any specific questions on that there. Finally, as always, it comes down to, if I was in your shoes, before we get on to any questions that you have, I would be doing mock papers that you can see on ACCA's website directly. The LearnSignal team have a great library of those as well. You also have debriefs that are on there. I know ACCA have done a couple of those. If you haven't already, definitely check those out. And I'm afraid the bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen, is you're going to have to do some practice questions to time, because obviously the exam shrunk from 4 hours to 3 1/4. It's still going to be time pressured on that. So ACCA, again, the markers are going to expect you, and this is a must. If I was doing the exam in your shoes, this is what I would do. So I'd be as specific as I possibly can to the requirements that are set. And you do that by using the words actually in the requirement to shape your answers, referring to the company's name, any individuals mentioned, and then applying those business models as well on there that are definitely going to help you out. And finally, it's the new materials that you're given on the exam day, which I think will be, well, I think there'll be two differences that could help you out. Number one, reading through the materials yourself on there is going to be really helpful. If it was me and thinking practically, I would go through, you've got the contents page on the Preseen materials, and it breaks it down section by section. There's a lot of information on there to digest. So I would set up a little tab on each individual one, and I would just go through each individual area and go, right, what was important on this introduction? These are the key bits. What was the next important thing on the competitor analysis? Are we more profitable? What's the scale of this business? These are the things that I just go through section by section, so that come the night of the exam, the week before, just read through all my notes of what we had on those sections, and then expect to find, obviously, new information on exam day that I'm going to have to analyze and apply to the scenario and requirements. If I do that, I've got a really good chance of passing, especially if I answer 100 marks on the examination. Not that if you've read through the external examiner's reports, some students only do 70%, 80% of the examination. I go, that is crazy on there. So we're just coming up to 1/4 now, which leaves us a bit of time just to have a little look through some of your questions on here. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now. I think that's come on there. So stop sharing on there. Cool stuff. Coming back onto the main screen for you on here. And then you can see on the side there, we've got an actual Q&A on the side. So I'm just going to pop in it. Please, oh, I spelled please right. Put your questions in here. So we're back on the main screen now. Any questions that you have for me directly, you want to ask me now, just pop it in there. I click start answering the question, and you can see it comes on the screen. Please put your questions in here. Smiley face. So it's a case of, if you have any questions relating to those Preseen materials, SBL, maybe the actual company itself on there, these are the things that you need to be aware of for it. Just before we get stuck into that as well, if you haven't already, it's one of those where I know there might be some students here going, oh gosh, I don't want to ask James or anything like that. It's just so that I'll just share with you on my screen again what I was referring to. So these are the Preseen information that you can see that was sent by ACCA that you can download. This is the contents page that I said. So I would have a tab on there set for introduction, another tab for the airline industry, and the slides that we've been based on today have taken all of this information and gone through each individual area and tried to break it down into more manageable chunks. But I would just have if I was going through it myself, I'd say, right, what in overview on there is important? So that would be my title. And you can see on here, it's got a wide range of businesses, schedules of commercial, you know how we talked about commercial flights and international flights or non-commercial flights on there. These are just the things that you need to be really comfortable about and breaking it down in more detail for you. Okay. So that takes us through on there, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm just going to come to some of the questions. Feel free to pop them in the Q&A and I will go through them individually for you. So just on to the first one, SK or Satvir has put, will this webinar be able to watch again? Yes, you can watch it again. I know it's on a Friday afternoon. It's just so we wanted to make sure the webinar was out as soon as possible, especially if students are doing some question practice over the weekend on there. So you can watch it again. And we've also put in the chat the support email if you want to get in touch with the Learn Signal team. So all good. And I hope the webinar was helpful. Are we able, next question. Kalinia on there has put, are we able to download the presentation slides? To the best of my knowledge, Kalinia on there, I think we are going to release the slides on there. I have no reason why we shouldn't, but there is also an overview PDF, which you will definitely be able to download, which you'll be able to access directly on Learn Signal's website on there. So on your student account. So definitely just make a note for that. Cool. I'm just going to come on to it on here. So Robin's put, can I bring any paper with me to the exam? So if you're doing the exam remotely at your actual house on there or wherever you've decided to do it, unless they're going to update or send a new protocol on there, generally speaking, if you do it remotely, then you're not allowed any paper to bring with you remotely. But if you are actually in an exam center, and again, unless they've changed this recently, you are allowed to bring a blank piece of paper in there for you to have next to your computer. So you have the scratch pad on there, you obviously have the questions, and then you have the answer space for it. But they usually will provide that on the exam day for it. So they usually have their own bits of paper for it. But Robin, the best thing for you to do is turn up early on the exam day if you're doing it at a center, and just ask nicely there, because they will have a sort of process for it as well. Don't just pull out paper out of your pocket or anything like that, or you will maybe be kicked out on it. Cool. I'm just going to, oh gosh, Anna's wrote a big one on here. Let me just go through this. It's going to be the 5th time to sit this exam. Oh my gosh, Anna, I'm so sorry to hear that. Good grief. Twice, 49%. Other times, 45, 46. My issue is getting stuck on question because the question is so bizarre and I can't think on my feet. And I know that's what I was trying to get across on the webinar, to be honest with you, Anna, where you've just got to get your business mind on. This means I leave 10/15/20 marks totally blank. Oh gosh. Also, not understanding what the question is asking. Do you have any tips for me? Thanks a lot in advance, from Anna. Right. The first thing you got to get used to, Anna, is when I did this old SBL exam, which was the old P1, P3, was I trained myself to use the words in the requirement to shape my answer. So if they mention about profitability, performance, a particular company, particular person, I used to write those key words in my answer to shape the answer how the marker is wanting to see it. And then there should always be clues within the scenario about points they want to actually you to refer to, with like risks or models to go through on there. But you can't be leaving 10, 15 marks blank. It's even if you're just getting in some of these questions, I kid you not, I'll be completely truthful on you now. There are what some tutors call like low-hanging fruit or just easy peasy marks where you just state the basics. State the basics either, and this is where if you got really stuck, read the requirement, have a bit of water and just say, right, what is it asking? And then you just state the basics as to, let's relate it to this airline in particular. And then secondly, let's relate it to the industry overall to see if I can get maybe like a first mark or two, something like that. And then hopefully that'll kick you into gear to then maybe you'll come up with some new ideas or things for you to put on there that can enhance your answer on there. So that's what I would be doing. I was used to say to myself, especially like when I did the advanced tax one, I went, there's in every question, there's about 1 or 2 easy marks. I've just got to get good at getting these easy marks and then try my best to get as many of the hard marks. But I always made sure I answered the best of my ability, 95% to 100% of the marks. So you've got to get your time allocation better on there. But if you pick out the keywords and the requirements, Anna, and then relate your answer back to it, so if it asks for non-financial information and you talk about financial information, well, you're not answering the question on there, are you? So it's just being really specific in your answer, relating it to that requirement, and doing as many question practice as you can to time, leaving time to obviously analyze your answer and going into a bit of a deep dive for it. If you haven't already, Anna, the external examiner's report I would read if I was you, and also the technical articles available on ACCA's website. That would be another 2 key areas that if I was in your position, I would be definitely using. So I hope it helps. You can always get in touch with me on Instagram or YouTube. Just put in James Wright on there. Keep in touch and drop us a message when hopefully you pass come September on there. But I hope the tips helped. I always just try and think about it practically for you on there. Coming on to Robin, I'm just seeing yours on there. There's a couple of, if I find it difficult to know what is required of me when answering questions, like for example, the use of pestle analysis, how will this be set out? Any keywords which helps us understand what they're after? Do you think you can get marks if you answered using another model? That's a really good question on there, Robin. Usually it's to work out which model to use or theory on there. It's when you're reading through the requirements, they'll give you like little triggers or little indicators to say that's a political point, that's an environmental point, that's a technology point. They will not, they might use the word like technology or political, but most of the time they probably won't on there. It's getting you to analyze it and say, right, please expect there to be an ability to apply a model in your exam, but you're going to have to interpret it because they're not just going to tell you which model, because then that's just going to show up. That's just going to allow a student who just learnt the textbook to try and get a pass on this. That's why I would say they're not just going to tell you pestle on there. It comes with practice. What I would do, Robin, if I was you, I used to do this to help me analyse it, is go through some past paper questions on ACCA's website. These will be on the old 4-hour ones, or you might have a question book for it. And if I was you, just quickly skim through a few question analysis on there. Don't read it through properly. Don't do the question or anything like that. Just read through the scenario and then just say to yourself, there is a model in here. I've had a little look at the requirement on here. Which model applies? So you're getting practice at going through large bits of information and picking out which model on there. And I bet you any money, if you do that for 10 exam questions, it will take you a few hours. That's where you'll start to get a heck of a lot better of one, understanding which model is being asked for. And then if you have a look at the answers, you'll go, oh, these are the sort of points that they're looking for and how to lay it out. And all they lay it out is PESTL, and then separate it out into the 6 areas. It will be a 12 to 18 mark question, and then you'll get 2 marks per letter on there. That's what I would do, Robin. It's not going to be in any ACCA guru fabulous article or anything like that. But practically speaking, Robin, when I had literally no time, like I'm sure you do not either as well, when you're working full time and you've only got like an hour and a half after work, I'm thinking to myself, if I can go through 10 exam papers and have a go at 10 different challenges to try and work out all these different theories and which one should be applied, that is really good time spent in my eyes on there. Not very official, but it's one of those sort of things. Satvir's puts, you are given the blank paper. Yeah, I thought you were still given the blank paper on there. Satvir. It's just ask at the session that you're going to. You don't get blank paper if you're doing it remotely because of the risks involved for it. But if you're in an exam centre where people obviously are officiating in there, invigilating. Now I'm thinking of a football match there. Then yes, use it to your advantage. Use it as like a little plan. The key to SBL is just writing down little trigger words like productivity, profitability, something like that, little things you picked up in the scenario, getting that down for like a 12, 16 mark question up at the top, and then writing 2 to 3 lines, leave a line, next point, leave a line, next point on there. It's the most time-effective way of answering, in my opinion, for it. What's the next one? Cool. Yeah, no worries, Robin. That's awesome. You're welcome on the advice. I only think of it practically. I know everyone on here has got limited time. You know, I'm not one of these global prize winners or anything like that who post on LinkedIn and say, yeah, I got 99. Oh, damn, I didn't get the last mile mark. I'll teach you to get 50 plus. That's it. I'm pretty good at that. So yeah. Anna's put thanks for the advice too. Yeah. Oh, honestly, Anna, you're more than welcome. It's all good. As I said, I just think, like, you know, after a long week, it's Friday afternoon now. You've got to probably get up, do some work this afternoon or over the weekend. You've got to think, where am I going to get the most value out of doing things? And mine would be in my green zone when I've got 2 to 3 hours of full focus. CBE practice questions, 2 time on the platform, analysing what theories and models I have to apply, making sure I've written down as much as I can on there, and then analysing the answers to say, this is what my answer was, this is what the ACCA answer was, how many of mine would have actually picked up on marks if I was pretty harsh, and then reading what their answers were and thinking, didn't consider that financial factor, non-financial factor, internal, external stakeholder. And then these are the questions that will go through your mind on the exam day. Just get into the habit of saying to yourself, what does this mean on here? How does that apply to the company? From an airline perspective, what does it mean? Overall, is that a staff cost? Is that a resource issue? Is it a people thing? Are there ethical issues on there? That is where I would be definitely homing in on. So I hope that has helped everyone today on there. It's fantastic to see so many of you joined us. I think we had over 50 or something like that. So if you are watching the recording, hopefully it's helped and you've gone through. You can also make it into my day in the life video because obviously my life is so entertaining these days. But thank you very much for joining us today on today's webinar. I'm sure you've all got to go back to work now, like I do, and then it's going to be a long old weekend going through some other stuff. So I'll put it in the chat. You can find me on Instagram, find me on YouTube, other details on there, so that, you know, I do plenty of collaborations with LearnSignal as well. We've worked together a number of years, so it'd be great to have you on board coming to another one. So hopefully it's all right. Thank you very much, everyone, for a fantastic session. Keep your chin up, keep going through all these sort of things. You'll be fine. It'll be all right. Deep breaths, you'll be okay. But thank you very much. I hope you found today's session helpful. Check out all the resources that we talked about today, going through those, and I will see you at another session as well. So thank you very much, Tammy, for popping in the chat down there. Thank you, Sunday, as well. Glad we're all good. Anna, I hope the Q&A session was helpful and very useful today, guys. And yeah, just drop us a message. Come to one of the support sessions we do on a Friday. It's just super to see how the sort of bits of advice can just sort of help you guys progress as well. So, you know, I don't sort of run these sort of sessions very formally or anything like that. It's just a bit of fun because I know it's Friday afternoon and people just find it a bit like, you know, I just want a bit different, just want a bit chilled. So hopefully you've found it all right. Thank you, Rose. Thank you, Satvir. Yeah, Valenta as well. Awesome stuff. It's just nice how we're all good. It'll be worth it. It'll be worth it on there. It'll be fine. So just keep up the good work. Thank you so much for everyone who's joined us today. Adeboje, thank you so much. Amy, keep up the super stuff. Sadit, Matt, hopefully you're all right. Keep at it, Jen. You'll be okay. You can keep up to date on all the other stuff, and then I'll tag in the Learn Signal team that we've done today's webinar. There you go. Look, we're in. You can give you a little wave. So, guys, I'm not going to waste any more of your time. I hope you've enjoyed today. Best luck with your exam, and yes, I will see you on the other side when I get a lovely message that you've got 50 plus. Especially one of our compadres who's joined us today. I think it was Laura. I can't remember top of my head. Or it was Anna as well. Good luck with it. You'll be fine. Right. Have a super day, guys. Have a G&T for me, and I'll see you soon. Cheers. Thank you, Maggie.